Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and this morning I'm looking at an excellent book, new edition of a work from the Legal Action Group. That's the Access to Justice charity. They never fail to let us down. LAG. This is another first-class book, coming as it does at an important time for community care and the law. That's what it's called, Community Care and the Law. It's now in the 7th edition from Professor Luke Clements. He's written it with a staff, basically, of people, a lot of people involved in the work. Karen Ashton, Simon Garlick, Carolyn Goodall, Edward Mitchell and Alison Pickup. I'd like to thank all of them very much for putting this effort in, because this is an important area. I haven't had many cases yet in this area, but the ones that I have had have not been easy, and I do think because one has got to try to understand where we are with this terribly difficult subject, the work of the Legal Action Group assists us immensely. The title I've given our review is LAG Takes Stock of the Many Social Care Legal Changes for 2020, with this new updated edition from Luke Clements and his team. And that's exactly what you're getting. Let's look at the book first of all. I've reviewed it before. There it is. There's the front, there's the spine, and then there's the back. And it's a heavy book, you can see from it, but I'm just looking to see how many pages. It's well over 1,000 pages long. That's the index at the back. I'm not going to try to bend it too much. It's a very detailed index, which I found again very helpful. I'm just going to get to the front of it so you can see where we are, because what you have got is, of course, as usual with the Legal Action Group, you've got a large number of appendix as well. There's the index itself. It's a very substantial index, which you can see. Then what you've got are various appendices dealing with precedents. For instance, this is precedent 4, a request under the Care Act 2014, for instance. Now, I will say, it's in the review, I will say even now that many people have no idea really about the Care Act. I had one case recently involving it, which meant that I really went into it in some depth, and even I found it really very difficult, I must say, to follow parts of it. But I think I understood enough, and I understood, because I was looking at the powers of a local authority, I was trying to fathom where we're going with this difficult subject. There's some information about Luke, which is there. He's the Cerebra Professor of Law and Social Justice at Leeds University. Now, in addition to that, there's the blurb from LAG. It's also available as an ebook, and as well as this print version. There's the preface. I've taken a little bit from the preface just to set out where we are. Then you've got the contents section, and then after that, a large amount of additional information there. You can see how much stuff there is in the contents section. Whoops, sorry. 21 chapters, remedies right at the end, as is always the case. 2 basic appendices, it's the legislation itself, and then precedents. Then you've got table of cases. Quite a large number of cases involved, even now. Then after that you've got ombudsman complaints and decisions. I think, again, that's very useful, because you're not talking here merely about the direct formal legal stuff, but the ombudsman actual complaints, that what they've upheld and so forth, are very important decisions themselves. Tables of statutes there. Obviously all the usual people, all the usual suspects are there. Tables of statutory instruments again, lot of information here, and then we move into the European stuff. Even though we're going, as it looks like now, we are leaving the European Union at some stage 2020. The European stuff is directly relevant, of course, and will be for a long time. Then there's an introduction, and it basically, the pendulum swings, welfare policy changes, there are no straight lines in community care. You see, that sums up very, very quickly where we are. Very difficult problems. Now, that is there, you probably can't see it, but it's actually paragraph numbering at the side there. So as you're looking, it is on the left-hand side. It's paragraph numbering. Of course, there's a lot of footnoting as well. Now, without going into too much detail, you can see how it works. You can see the paragraph numbering. It's not quite as apparent as it might be in some, but you can see the paragraph numbering there. You get used to it, and then you've got the actual footnoting there with all the huge amount of detail. As I say, it's a heavy book. I'm glad to put it down. There we go. Now, what do we say about the book? Well, as with all Legal Action Group publications, I'm a supporter of the Legal Action Group. I think it's a wonderful organisation, and therefore I'm quite happy to review any of their works to make sure it gets to the wide audience as possible, because the books are not expensive, but that is where the law is found, and that is where many judges, many deciders will actually use these works in order to decide what to do in a particular set of circumstances. So I say this, the new 7th edition of this book, it's a must-have book on community care and the law for those involved in any way with the enactment of the Care Act 2014 and what is now happening to community care law as we enter the 2020s. We found the new edition of the book to be very helpful indeed as we try to understand the details of the legislation whilst advising clients properly. Now, as I said to you earlier in my remarks, one of the problems with the legislation is trying to understand it. It's a very long, big piece of legislation. It's not the easiest legislation either, and I suspect we've just started, because this is an area that the new government of 2019, the end of 2019, is going to have to look at in some detail. I'm pretty certain there will be further legislation within this, what will probably be a 4-year parliament. Now, Professor Luke Clements and his experienced team have been involved in a comprehensive revision of what has now become an established text, giving us an up-to-date analysis of the law relating to the rights of adults in need and carers in England. And the book's published for a new edition which came out in 2019 by the Access to Justice charity Legal Action Group, LAG. It's over 1,000 pages long. It doesn't cover the law in Wales or the right of disabled children on purely practical grounds, because the length of the work would double, as the author says. And as with all LAG books for practitioners and unrepresented parties, it sets out to give the reader a comprehensive guide to this substantive law area. Clements has limited its own terms of reference because of the scope of the subject matter, and as I said earlier again, because of the legislation itself, the thing will just expand because there's so many problems that have developed. And I do think this is an area which the government will look at very seriously and place a tremendous amount of time in trying to work out the right way to go forward. I think that is going to happen. I'd like to think so anyway. We'll see how things work out. There is, of course, a sister volume available covering disabled children, which is also published by the Legal Action Group, and they published their 3rd edition in 2019. That was written by Clements and Steve Broach. The work, however, remains, this work, and I'm talking about this one here, remains, however, the leading text for lawyers, policymakers, local authority and voluntary sector advisors and carers with the introduction of the new 7th edition. And the work sets out in this complex area of law with clarity, but without oversimplification, because that's always a danger as well. And so that's one of the reasons why such a big book provides us with a detailed route map through the law itself, and it offers practical guidance on how it impacts on procedures and services. And what we found most helpful about the new edition is that it's now considered the preeminent legal text on adult community care law, and its contributors, of course, are the leading experts in the field, and with the main author, Professor Luke Clements, being an expert advisor to the parliamentary committee that scrutinised the bill, which then became what we now have, the Care Act 2014. So this is the man who's the oracle, if you like. I hope he won't mind me saying that, but that's basically where we are. He's the one who understands, if anyone does, because we are in a world today where we can talk about, oh yes, we all know the law, but frankly, it is such a wide series of areas where the state is involved and where there are rules and laws set out, that no one's going to know everything. So we need this sort of work to give us help to fathom some of the difficulties of the substantive law area we're dealing with. No more so than with community care law itself. So thank you to everybody concerned and to LAG for overseeing this. The date of publication of the 7th edition of the paperback is cited as at the 14th of May 2019, and it's also available as an ebook. And there's a website for that. You can see on the, I don't know if you look at that front bit of the book, the shaded areas where the appendices are. And then there's right at the back there's a very substantial index. Let me open it in the middle. This is NHS General Responsibilities for Services. You'll see there's the role of the National Health Service here. There's the paragraph numbering again, and there is the footnoting. You get some idea very quickly of the interface between both the National Health Service, central government, and of course local government. A big thank you anyway to everybody concerned for the production of this work, and I've no doubt we'll be getting another edition. Excuse me, another edition will come along before too long. In the meantime, Professor Clements, thank you very much indeed, and to your colleagues for a really first-class piece of work. Thank you. Bye-bye.